Long-time viewers of the channel know that years ago I made a series of videos talking about how Pyro stacks up against other classes and how to deal with said classes. I think enough time has passed as well as experience gained from me to properly tell you how a Pyro really deals with each class on an individual scale, as well as other tidbits that will help in the long run. Also, I somehow missed talking about Jungle Inferno stuff even though it just came out at that point, so that was a big oopsie. Just like before, we'll be splitting this subject up into the types of classes there are, starting with offense classes and making our way to the defense and support classes later on. So strap in as I, BonOakley, take you through Pyro vs. the World, Enhanced Championship Deluxe Edition.
Bang! I'll make it look easy.
We'll begin our arcade run with our first opponent, the Scout. Scout is a fast Boston boy with 125 health and the fastest movement speed in the game, including a double jump which no other class can perform. Wielding a scattergun, pistol and bat, Scout is a force to be reckoned with, as it can get up close and deal massive damage quickly and snipe you with a couple of pistol shots if you try to escape. The only upside is that their melee only deals 35 damage compared to every other class's 65, giving you a slight advantage when it comes to those attacks. They still however have the upper hand in swing speed, meaning they can potentially deal more if they consistently hit you. Basic Scout can be hard to track for most classes, but with Pyro it can be a little harder due to the close range nature of the class. It makes it easier for you to hit them with your flamethrower, however they can get those juicy meat shots on you. Making sure you don't get too close to them is essential to not getting damaged too much, as you can take them on mid-range with your shotgun or flare of choice. This however opens up the chance for the Scout to use their pistol and outspace your flamethrower. It's not an easy matchup on the Pyro side, as no matter the situation, Pyro is mostly at a disadvantage. The best you can really do at a base level is to use your flamethrower if they get close, as the flamethrower's afterburn will help in taking the Scout out, as he has one of the lower health pools in the game. If they start to pull away from the optimal range of your primary, it's time to pull out your secondary and attack them with it. Shotguns are fairly easy to hit them with due to being hit scan, and for flares, the only ones you really need to worry about aiming with is the man melter and flare gun, as the detonator and especially the scorch shot can be easy to use in hitting them. If the Scout decides to run at you with their melees, it should be somewhat easier to deal with due to that special mouse 2 button the Pyro has. Air blasting them away is easy to prevent being ambushed by melee hits, especially when the Scout has melees that can make you bleed and mark you for death. Some even have projectiles, so air blasting comes in use for those too. In fact, air blast is a useful tool in general against jittery Scouts. While they can double jump, air blasting them in the middle of jumps or off of a ledge neuters their mobility by a ton, messing up their plans and where they're trying to reach. This will affect things like the Force of Nature, Soda Popper and Atomizer since they affect maneuverability. This doesn't even mention the number of projectiles in their arsenal such as the Flying Guillotine and Mad Milk. Air blast will become essential for other classes, but for Scouts it's still just as useful to stop them from gaining health off of you with that mysterious white substance. Seriously, what even is the Mad Milk? What about the drinks they have? Well, the Criticola is hard since they get guaranteed mini crits but stick around mid-range and move around them to minimize damage. They get a mark for death themselves as well, so as long as you can hit them back, you should come out on top with your larger health pool. Bonk isn't that bad to deal with either, as 1, they can't attack you out under its effects, and 2, they'll be slowed after depending on the amount of damage they've absorbed, slowing them down so much that they won't be able to escape. Hell, if you're fast enough you can even take them out or deal a ton of damage before they even drink the special juice. Now that we've covered the bare minimum, how would you combine them all together in an actual fight? The modern puff and sting tactic comes to mind, as you can easily put them on fire and use a flare for an easy 90 damage, effectively killing them quickly. The panic attack is probably the best alternative, as if they're up close you can do an easy 100 damage plus if aimed well. Moving around the Scout will also help, as they will need to consistently keep changing aim and changing tactics depending on how you decide to attack. One thing I've noticed that works a lot is pretending to run away. Obviously this works better with more health, but if you turn around and pretend to run, a lot of Scouts will run at you and try to finish you off like they're the Pyro mains overextended. You can then turn around and take them out fairly easily, as some Scouts won't expect to see you coming back at them. If they seem to be overhealed, they will take a bit more damage to take down. Typically taking a Scout on with 1 or 2 others will make it easier, since their speed won't be that much of an upside if you're all shooting them. Not saying it'll be super easy, but taking too much damage as a Scout is not the best idea with their small health pool. One other thing you can do to take advantage of a fight against a Scout is flanking. As hard as it may be to flank a fast Boston boy, it can help you in taking them out faster than they can react in most situations. Getting up nice and close will basically seal their fate if they don't catch you. So that's it for the Scout. In short, flame them with your primary if they get too close, deal damage with your secondary if they're outside of that range, and prepare yourself for projectiles if possible. Try to mess up their movement when possible, and take advantage of your own movement to trick and deceive them into thinking they have the upper hand. Melees are hardly an issue most of the time, but make sure you're prepared for them regardless. They can come from pretty much anywhere at any time.
You cannot burn me, I'm already on fire!
Next on the list is the crazed jingoistic patriot, the soldier. The soldier is one of the more buff classes in the game with a massive 200 health, but with the downside of being the second slowest class overall. While being slow, they can perform rocket jumps which propels them in the direction they went, making them one of the more mobile classes overall. They carry the rocket launcher, the shotgun and the shovel, making them one of the more powerful classes. While mainly projectile based, they have a lot of utilities that buff them and their teams, as well as the obvious hit scan secondaries, so you have to be on the lookout for these. Now going to the primaries the soldier has, it would be simple enough to tell you to dodge them and reflect them back to deal damage. However, that would be telling only half the story. The truth is there is a lot of different rocket types that you need to worry about. The stock rocket launcher and black box are arguably the easiest to deal with in terms of air blasts, as they move at a reasonable speed for most pyros to reflect comfortably. Plus with the black box you'll receive the soldier's heal if you hit an enemy with a reflection. But of course it's still safe to say you'd rather not give the soldier an opportunity to get health himself, so be careful of splash damage. The original isn't too different either, with the most major difference being that the rocket shoots from the middle of the soldier instead of the side, so keep that in mind. Another primary that you won't have to worry about splash damage with is the direct hit. However, this presents a new problem: increased damage and projectile speed. The Liberty launcher has this additional stat as well, but the direct hit is deadly in the hands of a soldier who knows how to aim. At close range you won't get a lot of time to react, plus getting knocked into the air will allow them to deal mini crit damage to you if you're air shot. Your best bet with these is to predict the shots as best you can, but with mid-range rockets from this you're able to have a small window to react, typically just as they're shot from the barrel. It's quite jarring at first when you're not used to the different speeds of each rocket, but get a bit of practice in with reflex and you should be alright. Remember, the splash damage is new to the lot, so simply dodging is a good first step. The Liberty launcher isn't a bad launcher to practice these faster projectiles with either. It's slightly slower than the direct hit, but still faster than stock. The most different stat from any other primary with this one is that it has 5 rockets in each clip instead of 4, so you better prepare for that extra rocket and not get caught off guard, even with its smaller damage output. The cow mangler is similar to stock in a way, but has the ability to charge for a huge blast. There's plenty of rev up time for you to prepare a reflect, so keep calm with these situations when they occur, as you'd rather ignite them instead of your teammate being set aflame. The rocket jumper is nothing to worry about on its own, but you'll see why you should keep an eye out later on. The Beggar's Bazooka is yet again pretty unique in terms of firing rockets. Rather than having 4 in the clip straight away, the Beggar's requires the soldier to put the rockets in first, to a maximum of 3 before firing. This means that you can be barraged with up to 3 at a time, so the best idea for this is to make them fire these rockets from a distance so that the 3-degree difference in precision comes into play more often, causing them to most likely miss. Reflexes are encouraged here still, but it's best to use your secondary to deal damage from this kind of range and relying on your flamethrower up close after you've depleted their shots. Finally, the airstrike. The clip size will increase with every kill up to 8 per clip, with a smaller damage output and explosion radius. The biggest gimmick with this, however, is the increase in firing rate when the soldier is rocket jumping. This can become almost impossible to deal with in regards to air blast, so it's very rare when you get a good opportunity to shoot one back at them. The best bet here is to count how many they're shooting and get in at the right time, or just wait until they land again, which will differ on timing depending on if they have the base jumper on or not. Whew, that's a lot of rockets just there, so let's move on to discussing the secondaries. Typically when you get close as any class, the soldier will change to the shotgun to prevent getting damaged by splash damage from rockets. This leaves 2 choices for the Pyro: continue flaming him down or switch to your secondary. Actually 3 choices, you can always melee him if you're feeling lucky. The best choice really depends on the situation, such as if they're alone, being healed, or the amount of health they have left. It's up to your intuition on this front, and what kind of shotgun they may have. Stock isn't too bad, just run around them and dodge. This is pretty much doubled for the panic attack with the larger damage output if you're too close. The reserve shooter isn't typically seen unless it's either a last resort or they've popped you up into the air with a rocket with its mini crit on airborne targets. The boots on the other hand can go either one of 2 ways. It can either be the gunboats, leaving the soldier to fend you off with only his rockets and melee, or it can be the man-treads, which could potentially be a problem for you. The man-tread's biggest advantage against pyros is that it prevents the soldier equipping them to be knocked back as far as they usually are, by 75% to be exact. This is typically alongside the Trollger, so you're not likely to spot one using it outside of that loadout. The Righteous Bison isn't that bad to deal with either, just dodge and attack with the weapon of your choice. And finally, the base jumper is super easy to deal with as the soldier drops slowly, but you do have to prepare for rockets raining down. Overall, not too bad in terms of dealing with anything but rockets. That being said, the banners are a different breed, with some being more deadly than others. Let's begin with the buff banner. After charging the banner to max, the soldier can activate it to give guaranteed mini crits to him and his allies. Fighting a soldier alone, it's best to rely on your air blast as they'll be restricted to just their primary, which can be said about the rest of the banners as well. If they're in a group, however, you better get to cover or gather up some teammates, otherwise you won't likely survive. The best thing to do in that situation is to make them waste as much charge as possible, with engaging them being the very last resort. Next is the battalion's backup, which not only gives the soldier an additional 20 health, it provides a defense buff, with incoming sentry damage decreased by 50%, all other sources decreased by 35%, and immunity from critical hits. If you're running the Phlogistinator backburner or your medic is running crits, then it's bad news for you. Pyro won't do well against a battalion soldier at all, so teamwork is absolutely required to overpower them one by one. Make sure you're not activating anything with crits either, as they'll be completely wasted. If you really think you need to use it, then run to safety and wait it out. It'll be worth it in the end, I promise. So overall, teamwork makes the dream work against this banner. Finally, the Conjurer. This banner gives the soldier plus 4 health per second, and when activated, it grants them and their team a speed buff and health given to them when damaging others. Be aware that this banner takes less damage to charge than the others, meaning if the soldier is using this one, it'll be activated a lot more often than the others. Not only that, your best bet to nullify a push with the Conjurer is to concentrate on singular targets to effectively take them out. The best choice is obviously the soldier themselves, as it cancels the effect for everyone else around them. So as a Pyro, it's best to work with your team to distract the enemies pushing through and ambush the soldier to stop them from advancing. If you're not able to do this, however, your best bet is to, yet again, hide until the effect wears off. One final note for all of these banners is that it takes a couple of seconds for their effects to activate, so if you're quick and lucky enough, you can deal enough damage to stop that banner effect before it even starts. Melees for the soldier are a mixed bag. The Shovel, Equalizer and Pain Train will more than likely be shunted to the side as they don't provide any useful benefit in the long term. A lot of soldiers I've seen use the escape plan mainly to, well, escape. If you ever see a soldier take this out, rain bullets down on them. They're marked for death when they pull this out, so as long as you can adjust to his new speed, this will be an easy kill for you. The half Satuichi isn't used that much either from my experience. However, one interesting note is that soldiers cannot sheath it when below 50 health, so if you keep track of the soldier's health, you can get another easy kill here. Now, the two weapons you want to be wary of are the Disciplinary Action and Market Gardener. Let's talk Disciplinary Action first. This weapon can grant the soldier and the teammate he hits it with a small speed boost. This can be given to multiple enemies at once with no limits. As long as the soldier is hitting teammates, he can keep a boost going indefinitely. For the Pyro, this means you can get overwhelmed if they're good at boosting, so you'll want to take out the soldier quickly before he can help his team. The whip also has a large melee range like the demo's Eyelander, so melee on melee isn't recommended here. Keep further away from the soldier if you see him with the whip out. Shoot him from a good distance and you'll be a-okay. The final but most deadly melee in the hands of a skilled soldier is the Market Gardener. I'm sure you've all had experience fighting soldiers that use this, we all have. While rocket jumping, they have a guaranteed critical hit against enemies while still in the air. That means instant death for a Pyro. Seeing as how this is mainly used in Trolldier loadouts or by soldiers who know how to use it effectively, that means your tactics are limited. If you've spotted the soldier, your best choice is to keep as much distance from them as possible. Most people instinctively walk backwards to try and get away, but that only makes it easier for them to hit you most of the time. This may sound crazy, but walking towards them will force the soldier to readjust his trajectory to hit you. This isn't recommended all the time, but in those situations where you know you can't avoid a fight, this is your best bet. Once they've landed, that's your chance to strike, as they'll be trying to jump to attempt another hit. The Reserve Shooter is a pretty decent choice for airborne targets, or a simple air blast will throw them off. This is easily the most dangerous melee the soldier has for most classes. Now it's time to discuss some useful tactics to fight soldiers in general. Of course, getting good at air blasting is a great technique to keep by your side if they like to spam rockets at you. If you're able to ambush them, it's usually a good idea as they won't be able to escape your flamethrower range in time and will probably blow themselves up with a rocket if they're not expecting it. If he's smart and switches to his secondary, you'll want to pivot around them and kill them before they kill you. If you're using a primary like the Flog or Backburner, you might want to consider switching due to the limited or non-existent air blasts they have. And just like the Scout, air blasting them before they can rocket jump or in the middle of one can mess up their movement and can leave them in a dire situation, making them easy pickings for you and your team. One last point to remember is that if you're knocked into the air, the most you can do is either try your best to move out of the way of an air shot or do your best to air blast. It may be confusing and hard to do at first, but you can save your bacon if you're quick and lucky enough. Not much of a strategy, but it's good to keep this in mind to help survive at least a little longer. And that's Soldier overall. Mostly keep your air blast technique up to par and you should have no problem with them. While we can switch switch to shotguns to stop your reflected rockets, you should still have the firepower and speed to negate them fairly well. Banners are one of the more deadly utilities to think about, so when you hear one activate you should pick your next moves carefully. As for Trolgers, just remember to move at them and not away from them, as you'll survive more often and can punish them afterwards. Finally, the last offense class is a mumbling pyromaniac of indeterminate origin, the Pyro. Yes, even you Pyros will have to face your clone on the battlefield at some point. The Pyro is fairly quick with a decent health pool of 175, making him one of the beefier and somewhat quicker classes in the game. Of course, it's not that noticeable, but the stats don't lie. The Pyro specialises in getting up close and ambushing unsuspecting enemies with their flamethrower to deal fire damage and afterburn damage over time, allowing them to use hit and run tactics. Saying this, they're close to useless at long range. While slated as an offense class, Pyro can help in bringing utilities. As previously stated, the Pyro is also capable of Air Blast, which can put teammates out if they're on fire, push enemies back, and reflect numerous projectiles the other classes have. The basic Pyro carries the flamethrower, shotgun, and fire axe. As a Pyro yourself, you'll be safe from afterburn from all fire-based weapons except the Dragon's Fury and the Gas Passer when drenched, which we'll talk about later. When going up front with another Pyro, it's pretty much up to you outmaneuvering and out-damaging them with your flamethrower. Last time I suggested using your secondary for a faster damage dealing tactic, but in retrospect, this can be dangerous when you're both using your primaries. You're more likely to miss if you switch to a shotgun, and honestly holding down mouse 1 with your primary is good enough. If you have space between each other, backpedaling is a great option as you will deal more damage than they can due to how the flame works. Your choice of flamethrower is pretty essential here, and entirely up to preference for the most part. The Flog and Backburner can provide situational crisp, but the Degreaser allows you to switch faster, so depending on your playstyle, you'll be able to choose how to approach enemy Pyros. There's not much to say on dealing with another Pyro's flamethrower other than damage them faster and don't get hurt as much as they do. But one exception is with the Dragon's Fury, as the fireball shot from that can be reflected back, so being able to time the air blast could be a benefit when taking this on. Speaking of air blasting, this can come into play quite well when taking on a Pyro with your secondary weapon. The shotgun and the different types are easily the best choice to use when the Pyro is outside of your primary's range, which is the same for them too. If you're up close, the stock shotgun is an alright choice, but not really the best. The reserve shooter and a panic attack are much better choices when against another shotgun wielding Pyro. The reserve shooter comes second due to its 20% faster deployment with the downside of 2 less shots, meaning your only upside is that you'll be able to shoot first. The panic attack on the other hand is much faster to deploy, being 50% faster than stock's deployment, has the same clip size as stock, and can do more damage based on range. Clearly, if you're going against another Pyro using a shotgun, this is the optimal choice. Of course, the other two choices are perfectly fine, but with a faster deployment, you'll have the upper hand most of the time as long as you can aim properly. If you decide to go against those using weapons that come out faster than yours, just remember to use the same tactics you use with your flamethrower and circle them. Overall, any shotgun is great against another Pyro, as the other secondary choices aren't so good for consistency. The flare guns don't benefit you in any way against another Pyro. As I've said, afterburn is not a factor for Pyros except in specific situations due to being flame resistant. One of the benefits when fighting against a Pyro using a flare gun is that you have a small amount of time between shots for them to reload. This is an optimal time for you to shoot back before they either wait for the next shot or switch to a different weapon. The original flare gun may be one of the strongest choices for you to use against them if you know how to flare punch. This is essentially using the flame particles to your advantage by making them linger around the enemy longer than usual with your flamethrower and then critting them with your flare gun like any other class. This is somewhat tricky to get used to, but is very useful if you know how. If you're not good at it though, the Man Melter's 50% faster projectile speed can help you deal with further away Pyros. That being said, you don't have the ability to even attempt to flare punch with this one, so there's not much use for it against enemy Pyros overall. The detonator is also a good choice for Pyros outside of a decent range, as you can, well, detonate the flare if you're not that good of a shot. You can flare punch, but with only mini crits instead, so it's usually best to stick with mobility for this one. In my honest opinion, the Scorch Shot is easily the best to use against and the worst to fight against another Pyro. The knockback that it causes is great to push an enemy Pyro back if they're getting too up in your face. However, with how the weapon is typically used, they'll probably be spamming down a choke to deal damage from a safe distance, but that doesn't mean you can't either. I can wholeheartedly recommend this strategy against other pyros for certain, but overall I'd still say the flare guns are not that good against other pyros and are pretty easy to deal with going against them. Due to them being projectiles, you can reflect them back to deal somewhat decent damage as well. The final two secondaries are the thermal thruster and gas passer. The gas passer is the only weapon that can cause an enemy pyro to ignite you, as being doused in the gas makes you susceptible to afterburn. This however shouldn't be a factor you should consider most of the time due to its long charge time and the fact it leaves them without a secondary. This makes it very easy to take care of from mid-range, as they will really need to get close to hurt you back. The same can be said with the thermal thruster, with the only benefit given to pyro is more mobility. If you don't expect to fly in pyro, this can be a problem to deal with, but just like with the Trollger, forcing them to change trajectory to effectively use it is the best option. Be careful though, as they can switch to other weapons mid-flight, so you can be dive bombed really easily. A good idea is to count how many charges they've used, as they can only jump twice with it. If you know they've used them all, it's a great chance to go at it and kill them. The melees that the pyro have are also a mixed bag. The fire axe, sharpened volcano fragment and hot hand are all weapons that you won't need to worry about that much, seeing as how they don't have anything that special other than the hot hand speed boost on hit. Still, that won't affect your chances when taking a pyro that has the hot hand equipped. The volcano fragment will put you on fire if you weren't a pyro, and with the smaller damage output, it's once again nothing to fret over. The home wrecker is another non-factor due to the lower damage output and the fact you'll typically see pybros mainly wielding it, so in offensive situations you'll see different weapons instead. The third degree will mainly be a threat if you've got a medic following you. If they ambush your medic, you'll also be hurt, so watch for pyros trying to sneak around. If they come straight at you, it's probably best to push them away and attack out of their range so you can protect you and your medic. The extinguisher is only effective if the enemy pyro knows how to puff and sting effectively. Manipulating the flames to linger longer around you will allow them to use the crits on burning enemies, so your best bet is to airblast them away here as well, so the flames will go away before they can use the crits to their advantage. As long as they can't do that, the extinguisher is as useful as the home wrecker overall. The biggest nuisances when fighting a pyro on pyro melee fight is the power jack, back scratcher and neon annihilator. The power jack gives a bonus movement speed as long as it's out, meaning they can move around faster and hit you before you get a chance to hit them. Try to focus on their movement, as if you can hit them they'll take bonus damage, allowing you to take them out faster than they can take you out. The back scratcher is deadly regardless of class fighting it. The bonus damage allows the pyro to take out another pyro quicker than other weapons, meaning you'll have to be more careful of them. Like most melee fights, pivot around them or get out of their range to attack them with other weapons. Keep in mind they heal slow with dispensers and mediguns, so you can be more aggressive if they're being healed with any of these two. The neon annihilator is arguably more deadly, mainly in water areas though. Air blasting them away is key to not getting too shot with this weapon, as once you're wet, it's guaranteed critical hits until the wet effect wears off. This is especially deadly if used with a scout's mad milk or sniper's Gerati, as this means an enemy pyro can effectively do 156 damage all the time. In most maps however, water isn't a factor, so they won't be likely to use it unless they are teaming up with other classes to make you wet. If you find yourself in that situation, retreat to your team. If you are alone with a neon annihilator pyro, keep your distance and only get close when absolutely necessary, otherwise shoot them and you should be fine. Now it's time to talk about general strategies. Like previously said, the pyro is only good when up close. As another pyro, this makes it harder to attack without being hurt yourself. If possible, keep to mid-range and attack with secondaries to avoid as much damage as you can. Only really advance if you're certain you'll be fine, or if you can flank the enemy pyro, then it'll make it all the easier to kill them. Learning the puff and sting tactic will help in dealing damage faster if you want to use the flare gun and extinguisher against pyros, so it's best to stick to shotguns as secondaries if you don't have enough experience with this tactic yet. If you come across pyros using flare guns, you can try to reflect them back to stop them from damaging you and your team. This makes shotguns at mid-range even more effective due to the slower reload of the flare guns. With the pyro being great at flanking, you'll do good to check your back often, as weapons like the backburner and Phlogistinator will be hard to counter once they get the drop on you. If you prevent a pyro from getting behind, it will nullify the upside of the backburner. If you see a flog with crits activated, immediately move out of their range so that they can't use them. This is where the shotguns also shine, as you'll be able to deal damage while they can't hit you. As long as you can effectively damage a pyro while stopping them from damaging you while playing pyro, you'll do well. With that, the pyro has been fully covered. I won't sugarcoat it when I say pyro versus pyro is not all that complex or entertaining. For the most part, it's up to you to deal damage faster and outthink your opponent, ironic coming from a pyro main. There are small stats and tricks that can give you the slight advantage against another pyromaniac, but for the most part you'll want to shoot and dodge better than them. And that's the first part of the Enhanced Championship Deluxe edition of Pyro vs the World on offense classes. Hopefully there's something you've learned or something you haven't thought of before. If you did learn something new, hit that like button and subscribe for future pyro content as well as other parts of this series. I'm hoping to get back into making regular content once again, as I had burnt out for a while, as you saw. Luckily I'm back and looking forward to bringing you more Pyro goodness alongside some Fem Pyro. Just because I've updated my icon doesn't mean you've seen the last of Fem Pyro on this channel. Recent events in the community has just made me want to use it more, so if you judge content based on what model I use, well, sucks for you. As for the rest of you, I appreciate you all for watching until the end and supporting the channel. This has been your Fem Pyro enthusiast BonOakley signing out. See you guys in the next one.